We have three experts tonight who are going to guide us through the ins and outs of growing native plants. Cory Edging of Māla Lāʻau Hawaiʻi. He grew up surfing and loving the outdoors. Cory went to school for environmental management and protection because he knew at a young age he wanted to help the environment. After working in the nursery and landscape industry for over 10 years, Cory saw firsthand how big of an impact we have on Hawaii's ecosystem. It's his mission to have a native plant nursery and spread awareness. And I would like to say that Cory has fulfilled that mission. He is our newest Plant Pono endorsed nursery, and we are so proud to have him and so proud to be with him when he spreads awareness. So Māla Lāʻau Hawaiʻi has some of the rarest plants in the world, and Cory wants to help us do whatever we can to protect them. Next, we have Rob Yagi. He is a preserve manager at the Waikōloa Dryforest Initiative since 2016, and he's been working in conservation since 2010. Rob is a hardworking and dedicated conservationalist responsible for many successes in the Waikōloa Dryforest restoration. He tirelessly protects Hawaii's dry forests through land management, wildfire mitigation, and community outreach. And it's important to remember that tropical dry forests are the most endangered forest type on the entire planet. And that's what Rob does. That's what Rob conserves. And I've seen him throughout the years working very hard. And whenever I see him working, he has a huge smile on his face. So I know Rob is dedicated to protecting the Waikōloa dry forest. Rob's love for Hawaii's native plants stems from their high rate of endemicism, which makes everywhere in Hawaii an amazing place to observe plants. And I can't agree with you more, Rob. No matter where you go in Hawaii, you find these little niches where the native plants are living and thriving. And it's always a special experience to find them growing in their native habitat. And last, but definitely not least, we have Ande Buskirk. She is happy to be employed by the Hawaii Island Forestry and Wildlife, where she is able to work hands-on with plants and animals and share about them with other people. Ande grew up in the South Carolina Low Country, where she went to college to major in anthropology. She worked as a farmer and then furthered her education, earning an MS in environmental science and becoming a horticultural therapist. Ande is grateful to have lived and worked in Hawaii for over 10 years, and she is blessed to call Ola'a home. She loves native plants because of their adaptations are amazing. And I'm thankful to work in the same complex as Ande. So we get to collaborate very often. We can just walk to each other's offices. It's easy peasy. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see the title slide?
Good.
Okay, thank you. So again, our webinar is entitled Hawaii's Native Plants. Once you grow native, you'll never go back. And again, we have Cory Edging from Māla Lāʻau Hawaiʻi. He is a Plant Pono endorsed nursery down in Wawa in Pahoa. We have Rob Yagi, the Waikōloa Dryforest Initiative manager, something. He's protecting it. And Ande Buskirk from DLNR. So why grow native? Let's start there. Well, native gardens need less inputs. They need less fertilizers, water, and they recover faster after installation. And that's because if planted in the right environment, that's where they evolve. They're just gonna flourish and do better where they are grown. But also on a more spiritual side, growing native deepens our connection to the past, and it's a way to respect those that came before us. And furthermore, growing native, it just deepens our connection to the past, and it provides native habitat for critters like the Kamehameha butterfly and different insects and snails and, you know, things that live in Hawaii that we don't often see. One way to grow native is using the Plant Pono website. So throughout this presentation, you'll see this QR code up here. And if you use your camera and take a picture, it will take you to different places in the website plantpono.org. So this QR code should take you to about 70 or more native plants that we have written up and taught, you know, explained how to grow. There's many, many more native plants, and we're always adding more to the website. So if you don't find it here, it doesn't mean it's not an industry or it's not easy to grow. And on this page, you can find the name here. We have Koʻokoʻolau native white hibiscus, and it tells us the characteristics and different uses and how to grow it and what it needs and doesn't need, sorry. So each page will give you like more information on how to better care for your native plants. So that's a great way to celebrate Native Plant Month, is by going to plantpono.org and searching for native plants. Another great way to celebrate Native Plant Month is by supporting Plant Pono endorsed nurseries. We have about 20 or 22 nurseries island-wide, and they've all agreed to not sell invasive species and to promote native plants wherever possible. But they also have lots of non-native plants that are not invasive. So you can still beautify your yard with native or non-native, just don't do invasive. And that's the best way to protect Hawaii, is just don't plant invasives in the first place. That's the best way, is prevention. Just don't plant them. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it on to Cory.
Māla Lāʻau. Aloha, everybody. I'm Cory with Māla Lāʻau Hawaiʻi. We are a native plant nursery specializing in coastal lowland species. We're located on the east side of Hawaii Island in Pahoa. I'd like to start off by saying mahalo to Big Island Invasive Species Committee for putting this little plant webinar on, and everything else you guys do for our beautiful island. You guys asked me to pick 5 native plants to talk about, and I tried to pick 5 species that are easy to grow and also beneficial to us. We're going to start here with Uhaloa, or Waltheria indica. Uhaloa is an indigenous shrub growing up to like 5-6 feet. It's found pretty much everywhere on island, from sea level up to 4,000 feet plus. I can almost guarantee everybody watching has seen Uhaloa before. Some people consider it a weed, an unvalued, unwanted plant. I disagree. It's not a weed. It's very valuable and should be wanted. Uhaloa thrives in full sun and low water. It's very drought tolerant, wind tolerant, salt tolerant. It's a good soil stabilizer. It's just overall a very hardy plant. Next slide. Almost. Uhaloa thrives in disturbed areas. That's why you commonly see it alongside roads and in disturbed areas. In that last photo, or going back, it's growing like straight up in the middle of the road. Like other drought tolerant plants, it has very fuzzy pubescent leaves. They're ovalish and have a crenate or like rounded serrated edges. It has small little flower clusters that produce seed, It's not a very long-lived plant, but it tends to propagate itself readily by seeds. Uhaloa is also very medicinal. It was used in Lāʻau Lapa'au. The entire plant, roots, stems, leaves, flower, they were brewed fresh into a tea. It's known to have anti-inflammatory and antifungal properties. Actually just did a study on Uhaloa's roots and found 16 compounds that confirmed the anti-inflammatory properties. It was used for bronchial infections, sore throat, asthma, and just the everyday rundown feeling. You can chew on the bark and you can eat the flower buds. They're not like delicious, but good for you. Next slide is Nanea, I'm pretty sure. Nanea or Vigna marina, it's also known as the Hawaiian beach pea. Nanea is an indigenous crawling ground cover vine. It's naturally found along coastlines at sea level, but can handle higher elevations in the garden. It loves full sun, but can handle partial shade. It's super salt tolerant, drought tolerant, wind tolerant. That's another good soil stabilizer for erosion. It has large, glossy, round leaves, and they come in sets of 3. Another name for Nanea is Akole Makili, meaning cracked buttocks. And in the photo here, you can see it has small yellow pea-like flowers that resemble a butt. Next slide. Nanea is in the pea family, and it's a natural nitrogen fixer. I like to call it the native perennial peanut because it can pretty much do everything the perennial peanut can do. It's extremely fast growing. It will actually outcompete weeds. If you can see in the back photo on the photo on the left, it's doing a pretty good job at that. The one negative is it will climb. In that same photo in the back right corner, you can see it climbing pretty good. So if you don't want it climbing something, just rip it off and mulch it in the garden. The flowers turn to seed pods that when mature turn brown and split open, and they have little seeds the size of peas. You can see in the photo on the right. The entire plant is edible. Roots, leaves, stalk, flowers, the seeds. You can boil the seeds and make it into, put them in soups. The leaves and stems were pounded and applied to wounds and sores. Let's see, next slide. We're gonna be talking about Koʻokoʻolau, I believe. Specifically Biden's Hawaiiensis. Hawaiiensis is an endemic shrub to small tree, naturally found at sea level up to like 5,000 feet elevation. There are 19 species of Koʻokoʻolau in Hawaii, each island having their own specific species, and they differ by leaf, flower, and seed shape and different characteristics. It has yellow daisy-like flowers that you can see in this photo, and they turn to seeds that don't have any barbs. That's a good thing to remember. There's a few invasive species, beggar's tick or Spanish needle. The seeds have barbs. The native species never developed barbs because back then there were no animals to cling on to. Koʻokoʻolau can also be a short-lived plant, but it'll propagate itself by seed, and it tends to die back after it flowers. You can pinch off buds and roll the seeds, and then it'll help promote new growth. Next slide. Koʻokoʻolau is another very medicinal plant. It was used in Lāʻau Lapa'au. It was known to lower blood pressure and was used for arthritis and stomach and liver problems. The leaves and the flowers were brewed fresh into a tea, and it was commonly used in conjunction with Uhaloa. Everybody talks about mamaki and its health benefits, but Uhaloa and Koʻokoʻolau have just as many health benefits. I like to do the tea trifecta of Uhaloa, Koʻokoʻolau, and mamaki, and with all the health benefits combined, you'll live forever. Okay, next slide. ʻAkiohala. Bingo. Hibiscus fricillatus. ʻAkiohala is the only indigenous of the native hibiscus. All the other hibiscus are endemic. It's naturally found at sea level to about 1,000 feet elevation in wetland type habitats. But in the garden, it honestly seems to be pretty drought tolerant. It doesn't need as much water as in nature. It can live in full sun and partial shade. It grows up to about 8 feet tall if it hasn't toppled over. Another name for ʻAkiohala is Hauʻele, meaning traveling how. It has a really similar growth pattern as Ma'o Hauʻele, our state flower, the yellow hibiscus. They'll get super top heavy and fall over, but then reroot and keep growing. And it's also referred to as the native purple hibiscus, but you can see in the photo the flowers are generally pink. The center stamen will be dark maroon to purple. Let's see, next slide. The leaves of ʻAkiohala, they start off lobed, and then as they mature, they turn more cordate or heart-shaped, and they're kind of rough to the touch, almost like sandpaper. The stems and flower stalks are hairy, almost pokey. You can get like actual splinters. It's one of those look, don't touch plants. Or if you pick flowers, use snips or scissors. Rose beetles kind of like to eat the leaves, and if you plant it near a nighttime light source, that'll help with the beetle infestations. ʻAkiohala, the bark was used for cordage, and the flowers were used as a laxative. Food for thought. Next slide, and last but certainly not least is ʻAʻkia. Waiting for it. ʻAʻkia, specifically Wickstromia sandersensis, is an endemic shrub to small tree growing up to like 15 feet plus. It's naturally found from sea level all the way up to like 6,000 feet elevation. It likes partial shade, but can handle the full sun. It's typically found as an understory plant though. And sandersensis is sometimes called the tree ʻAʻkia or the large leaf ʻAʻkia. You can see in the one top left photo how big the leaves get compared to some of the other ʻAʻkia varieties. The flowers have small yellow fragrant flower clusters, as you can see in the other photo top right, and the fragrance gets stronger at nighttime. Flowers will then turn to fruit, starting off green, and then they turn yellow and then red once they're ripe in that bottom photo. Okay, next slide. ʻAʻkia, there are 12 different species throughout the islands, each island having its own unique species, and they differ by leaf, flower, and fruit characteristics. The bark of ʻAʻkia was used for cordage, and the roots and bark and leaves were used to paralyze fish for fishing. Fun fact. And that is all of them. Mahalo, you guys, for listening. I hope you learned a thing or two about some of our awesome native plants.
Thank you so much, Cory. I definitely learned a lot. I really want to drink some tea with you one of these days. I want to have your elixir for life with Uhaloa and Koʻokoʻolau and mamaki. That sounds
We
delicious.
made that happen.
I made the mistake one day of finding the native purple hibiscus in a community garden, and I got really excited and went to go grab some of the pods to like collect the seeds. My hands were full of splinters for days. And that's when I learned it was kind of a newer introduction to Hawaii because it's so new in the scheme of things. It didn't have time to lose its thorns, spines, and burrs. Fun fact.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Rob. On to you.
All right. All right. Hi, everybody. Rob Yagi with Waikōloa Dryforest Initiative. Yeah, thanks, Cory. Thanks for highlighting the Uhaloa, man. That plant is close to my heart. I live here in Waikōloa where it grows really well. My yard is like covered in Uhaloa, and everybody walks by, they think it's like loaded with weeds. I'm like, no, it's just Uhaloa. So thanks, man. That was awesome. Right here we have another hibiscus relative. This one is called ʻIlima or Cytophallax, and it likes to grow in full sun, sunny areas, dry forest systems. Basically from sea level, 3,000 feet, and I think it grows actually quite a bit above that too. I've seen it. And this one is it actually can handle some of the wetter areas as well. I've known people out in Kēpau and Pahoa that grow it under the eaves of their house where it's a little bit drier, and it'll start to come up pretty well. And you can see that it has these nice little, about, I don't know, maybe about a ½ inch orange hibiscus flowers on them. And beautiful, beautiful leaves too, this kind of nice minty green, real fuzzy if it's in full sun, and has kind of a soft texture of it, again, with those scalloped or toothy edges on the edge. And it grows well in the landscape. Once it's established, you don't really have to water it. You can if it looks really dry, but sometimes they dry out, die back, and then new seeds will be coming up underneath. But you can find it kind of in several different forms depending on what you're trying to use it for in the landscape. And more commonly, what I see in nurseries and around different landscapes is the ʻIlima papa, which is this kind of ground cover. Doesn't grow higher than maybe 12 inches, makes a nice thicket on the ground. But there's also this awesome shrub type, which is also quite common. But if you're looking for something with a little bit more height, you can find that. And both are Cytophallax. There's actually 5 recognized types of ʻIlima throughout Hawaii. Some have kind of a brownish flower to it. Some are known for their perfectly symmetrical flower. Some have a little bit of asymmetry to them, but all super beautiful and almost flower, most of the way throughout the year with these small orange hibiscus flowers. And once those are pollinated, they're going to start making seeds. You can see kind of a black seed capsule in there with some seeds developing in there, and very drought tolerant. So they'll come up in disturbed areas if you scatter the seeds, or if you plant them, they'll grow really well. They can handle quite a bit of shade too, and I've noticed that those shadier ones get larger leaves on them as opposed to the ones that are out in full sun. And before you know it, you'll have quite a mass of seeds like you see in the picture here. And you'll notice that they come out with either black seeds or this lighter color tannish white seeds. And I'm not sure if I saw on the participants list, there's quite a few experts out there. Does anyone know anything about that that differentiation in the color of the seeds. If you do, you can type it in the chat. That would be awesome. But yeah, super beautiful, and ʻIlima is definitely a good one. We'll go to the next slide. And another nice plant out there is Hōʻawa, and you can find this plant in wetter areas and drier areas. This one right here is Pittosporum hosmeri, which is probably one of the more common species that you'll be able to find for landscape use. And you can see these really nice white flowers on the that come out of the stems and of the branches, and they're very, very fragrant. It's really a nice one to make lei. They can be white, almost to a yellow color to them, and it's a small tree, so it does get some height over time, and it grows really kind of, in the landscape setting anyway, it grows really dense and kind of tightly clustered, almost like a hedge type plant or a nice specimen plant. But you see them out in the wild, and they can have this kind of spindly look to them, like the above picture here. But what I've seen out in the landscape, even ones that are about 20 years old, are still real thick and dense with leaves. And after they flower, once those flowers get pollinated, they start to make these really interesting looking fruit on them. Almost, some of the students around the Waikōloa Preserve like to call it the dry papaya, because they get these like walnut shaped fruits that will eventually, as they dry out, open up like a clamshell, and inside is this bright orange color to attract birds, with these kind of oily black seeds lighting the middle. It is known that there have been observations of the Hawaiian crow, the ʻAʻaliʻi, feeding on this particular plant, the fruit. And so it always has a connection in my mind to the crow, the ʻAʻaliʻi. Next slide. And one of our favorites from Waikōloa is the Wiliwili, or Erythrina sandwicensis. But this is a bean family relative, similar to the Vigna marina, same plant family. But this is one of our endemic trees. It can grow quite large over time, probably about 30 feet around, and spreads kind of as wide as it grows in many cases, depending on where you are. They're really striking as you drive through. You can see them on the high road going into Kona, definitely on Waikoloa Road, right off the sides of the road, and even up in Waimea. But they're well known for having this really striking orange bark and kind of twisted architecture to the tree. The name itself, Wiliwili, means kind of to twist or twisty, and in reference to the bean pods that will twist open to reveal these bright red seeds. And even the architecture of the tree is this really bright orange color. And if you do plant one thing of note is that they do lose their leaves for part of the year. So in the summertime, they drop their leaves, which is just this natural adaptation for dealing with these dry forest systems that don't get much rainfall in the summertime. And so you have kind of this flush of leaves during the winter months when we're receiving rain. They drop all of their leaves in the summertime. And just when things are the hottest and starting to dry out the most, they spend a lot of energy and resources making the bright orange. Okay, so here's the pictures again. So you see this tree on the bottom here, doesn't have any leaves. This is a summertime picture. And just at the end of summer, all of these bright orange flowers will start to come out. Thanks for going back and forth on the slides.
I'm sorry.
I'm going all over the place, but thanks for staying
I'm
with
sorry.
But yeah, you can see that that the flowers start to come out, and you know, it's really known in the forest that it's a really critical time for this tree to be out there. I see something coming in. 1 second. Is Rob Yagi familiar with the so-called black coral ʻIlima? Is it for sure endemic? I'm not actually familiar with that plant. I'll have to start to look into that, because that's actually the second time I've heard about that recently. So I'm gonna have to look into that and get back to you. But if anyone else knows about it, definitely type in into the chat. So yeah, the Wiliwili, they'll make those flowers. It's a really important nectar source for the birds of the area during those hot summer months, because every other plant in the dry forest is really trying to contract and save its resources. But Wiliwili has this special strategy of spending, kind of an expensive production of making these flowers. Takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of nutrients, and those flowers provide nectar for birds throughout the dry forest. And then they'll come out with those bright red seeds you saw. But once you have those seeds, they're actually really easy to grow. If you can get your hands on some seeds, or even these small plants, you can scarify the seeds and possibly learn more at one of Bisk's plant workshops coming up. But once you put those seeds down in the soil, they'll start to grow really rapidly, be plantable like these plants here after only about 16 weeks or so. But we've noticed that when we plant them out into the forest, they grow at a rate of about a foot per year, and same in width. And that's without very much water input at all. It's a nitrogen fixer. It's going to be a nice shade tree as it grows. And really, it's just a nice one to have in some of these drier habitats. There is a question: will Wiliwili grow in Hōʻawa at 1,300 feet in a dryish microclimate? And I would say definitely give it a try. We've had some success stories as we've given out Wiliwili trees over the years from almost all parts of the island. So they're definitely going to want to be in a range of roughly 9 to 50 or 60 inches of rain per year. So if you're within that zone, it's perfect growing spot here in Hawaii. But we've had success stories in Hilo as well. So people have them in their yards in the well draining area, and they seem to be doing just fine. From a conservation lens, you wouldn't want to have like a preserve of Wiliwili in Hilo, but if it's in your yard, give it a try and see how it goes. I think they're really nice. All right, and here we are with one of my favorites, ʻAʻaliʻi, or Dodonaea viscosa. This is another shrub to small tree. Grows well from basically sea level up to higher elevations, and I like to call it kind of a habitat builder, or even in my mind, it's like a bulletproof plant. It's really easy to grow. Gets this nice green foliage and these awesome red fruit clusters. What you're seeing up in the picture above is actually the winged fruit with the seeds inside, and down below you're seeing some of the flowers there. But they can be both male and female. So if you plant ʻAʻaliʻi and want to have viable seeds, I would suggest planting a few of them to see what comes up. But definitely, does really well in dry conditions. It can handle wet conditions as well. So it's kind of an island-wide plant and doesn't need a whole lot to get established. Once you plant it, you can water it in the beginning if you are in one of the drier areas, and it's going to grow really rapidly. Start making these nice fruit, within the first 3 years is what I see on average. And we call it a habitat builder because it grows really quickly, makes leaf litters, starts to rebuild the soil if that's something that's needed in the area. And we'll start to make seeds, and you'll see little seedlings popping up underneath in just a few years. Yeah, so here's one planted in the landscape, and looks like it's doing really well. You can see it. Here is this in Hilo? It looks like it. But there's also some that have been planted right outside the Kona Target area. You can see a nice kind of hedge. They handle pruning really well, so you're starting to see it more and more in the landscape where it's being pruned into these hedges.
This one, sorry to interrupt you, is at the Mauna Kea Resort.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, now I see it in the background there. Cool. Yeah, so it's really easy, and makes these sometimes it's loaded with these fruit clusters that are really, really good, good for not only looking at it, but you see them a lot in lei, and especially lei po'o around the head. And fun little story for my wife and I. When we got married, rather than people throwing rice at the end of the wedding, we had people throw ʻAʻaliʻi clusters at us as we walked down the aisle afterwards. It was pretty incredible. Definitely highly recommend it. But yeah, again, like this slide says, it depends on sunlight and water is how it's going to grow. If it's in higher altitudes, you see that taller, more tree-like form, and especially if it's in a more forested area, it's going to start to reach up towards the light. And at lower altitudes, you'll see it in this more shrubby and bush-like form. But if you plant it in your landscape, you can kind of shape it to how you want, which is one of the great things about ʻAʻaliʻi. Next slide.
Thank you, Rob. I have to say your wedding story is one of the most adorable wedding ceremonies I've ever heard of. And I hope that when people get married in the dry forest area, that they start throwing ʻAʻaliʻi seeds.
For sure.
That's just beautiful. We could do ohia and ʻAʻaliʻi.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Thank
yeah,
you for
I'll have to try to go onto your guys' Facebook page and post a picture of everyone throwing the ʻAʻaliʻi.
Please do. Please do. That's glorious.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Andy. Your turn.
Yeah, I'm stoked to share this time with native plant lovers. Thanks, you guys. The first plant I want to share about is Pōhinahina. It may be familiar to a lot of people because it's a pretty popular landscaping plant in terms of native plants in human environments. Pōhinahina is a ground cover plant, and it has two alternative names I'll share with you. One is Kolokolo kahakai, or English would be beach vitex. And with both these names, you can tell that this plant is more of a lower elevation plant. Kahakai, meaning like close to the water, and then obviously beach vitex. So yeah, it's a vigorous plant that's hardy and easy to grow. It's salt tolerant, that beach association, and it can handle sun. Next slide. We're looking here at some different views of the plant. Because it can handle being at low elevations and by the beach. It can also be drought tolerant, which means it's a good xeriscaping plant. And you can see the seed capsules are pretty attractive. So one of the uses is that this plant would have been used in lei. Next slide. And yeah, just showing more pictures of the plant and how it can fill in empty spaces. It's really vigorous, and I think that's why it's so popular in our human landscapes and as a landscaping plant. This plant is easy to propagate by cuttings, and it will, as it spreads, it will lay itself down and root as well. So you can look for that when you're out and about. Next, please. Another plant to share with you is Alaheʻe. This one I would say is an emerging landscape plant. You can see how attractive it is. It's shrub-like, also growing at these lower elevations, tolerating sun and tolerating drought. Next slide. You can see here its use in the landscape, and its flowers as well. They're fragrant, the flowers. And so that's one reason that they can be really valuable in a human landscape. And historically, this wood from Alaheʻe was pretty hard. So actually one of the plants used to make o'o. And yeah, what a great hedge plant. Next, please. We're going to spend some time on this slide because this is the most attractive photo and only photo of ʻUlei for this presentation. ʻUlei is, and I'm realizing now that I didn't say the scientific names of the others. I apologize for that, but this one has a challenging scientific name, Osteomelles anthelytifolia. And I guess what I want to share about that is if you back up beyond the genus into plant families, ʻUlei is in the rose family. So some in English call this Hawaiian rose. It's super perfume smelling, and for that reason, you can find it in, again, I would say maybe like an emerging landscape use. You can find it in human environments, but you also find it growing wild in the national park on Mauna Kea. It's got a pretty good elevation range, and it can handle wet and dry. It produces white berries with pretty large seeds, so you can grow this from seed, and it would be a great container plant as well as like a nice shrub in your yard. Next, please. Pilo is a plant I'd like to see grown more. This is a plant that would be great if you live in sort of this middle elevation range. It grows in mostly wet environments. And so I live in Mountain View. Ola'a was in my bio. And this is a plant I've planted in my yard. It grows from seed. And it's related to coffee. You might be able to see, if you've seen coffee plants growing, you might be able to see some similarities. Pilo, the Hawaiian name, refers to the smell of the crushed leaves. It doesn't smell good. And coprosma in the scientific name also refers to the smell of the crushed leaves. So you're not growing this plant for the smell of the crushed leaves, but you may be growing it for like a shrub or a screen, for its association with birds. This plant is food for the oma'o in our east side forests here. Yeah, and I'm fond of it. I want to see more of that. Finally, Pāpala kēpau. This is a neat plant, really glossy leaves, attractive flowers that also have a nice fragrance. It's pretty variable. It can grow wet and dry. And this plant is the bird catching plant. So it would be a really cool specimen because as it grows, it produces this sticky fruit that's purple, and it's very strange looking. And that sticky fruit is what bird catchers historically use to grab forest birds from branches, take their feathers, and release them back. It can be pretty fun for kiddos and just a neat specimen to have around, and that connection with history. And that's what I had to share about my 5 plants. I'm going to let Molly take over, but mahalo for your time, you guys. I appreciate being a part of some native plant love.
Oh, and thank you everybody for joining. If you've seen our native planting classes, I'd just like you to know that we have Alaheʻe, ʻUlei, and a few for Pāpala kēpaus to give out. So sign up for those native planting classes and maybe you'll score yourself a special tree to take home. Oh, and we also have Pilo. I'm not sure what species, but definitely something for higher to mid to higher elevation, somewhere where like strawberry guava is growing. Take out the strawberry guava and plant some Pilo. But yeah, so thank you everybody for joining. And again, like I want to thank the Waikōloa Dryforest Preserve, Ka'ulunani, who is funding our native planting classes, the Department of Forestry and Wildlife, of course, the Big Island Invasive Species Committee and Plant Pono, and Cory, Rob, and Andy. We really appreciate you guys sharing your mana'o with us and helping us to learn more about native plants. We'll get to questions in just a second, but I just wanted to share this real quick. Further reading, if you want to learn more about native plants, the best thing you can do is get this new book called Go Native, Your Guide to Growing Native Hawaiian Canoe Plants Wherever You Work, Live, Work, or Play. Sorry. That's the newest native planting guide that's out. It's less than $25. It's available from different retailers, or if you go to conservation festivals, a lot of times they're there selling them. So this is in print and readily available. In the middle, we have Growing Hawaii's Native Plants, which is my go-to to learn about how to grow native plants. I bought this when I was in the forest team program at Hawaii HCC back a long time ago. It was like required reading. And I just like looked it up to see if I could buy it. And the book is now hundreds of dollars. So I think it might be out of print. But then Amy Greenwell has this other book, just Amy Greenwell Garden, Ethnobotanical Guide to Native Hawaiian Plants. That's another great resource. Of course, you could always reach out to any of us, Andy, me, Rob, Cory, Bisk. We will give you all the information we have to help you grow native plants, because that's where our hearts are, and we want everybody to grow native. It's a good thing to do. A great way to support Hawaii and celebrate Native Planting Month. Okay, so do we have any questions, Jade? On Zoom?
There is a ton of questions.
Okay.
The link is not working. Can you double check it, please?
Yes, sorry, I'll get the correct link.
Okay.
Halamai.
There's a bunch of questions. I'm just going to start from the beginning. For Cory, people are wondering where your nursery is at, and do you accept walk-ins? Would you rather than make an appointment?
We are located in Pahoa on the east side of the Big Island. And as of now, we're just appointment only. You can find all the contact info on Big Island Invasive Species website or Plant Pono's website, or go to my Instagram at Māla Lāʻau Hawaiʻi.com or on Instagram.
All right, thank you. If you don't mind, can you throw your Instagram in the chat box while we continue with questions?
I will do my best. I am terrible with technology, and I've never done one of these chats.
All right, no worries.
Cory, we got you. We'll put it in.
Mahalo, mahalo.
Okay, so this is somebody who's looking for which native plant they should grow. Pretty much something that can compete with Himalayan raspberry. They're looking for a ground cover, something soft, not slippery, okay for pets, but not interested in perennial peanut or clover. Is there something you guys think would be the best option for them? Yeah,
I'd say Nanea if it can handle the elevation, but that would be an experiment.
Yeah, they said they were in a volcano, so it's kind of wet and high elevation. That's the workout.
It would be an experiment, but a fun experiment.
Okay. Oh, what was that plant again? Sorry, I might have spoken over you.
Nanea. I just refer to Nanea as like the indestructible ground cover.
Okay, thank you. This is, I'm sure lots of people want to know this one. Any treatment for Coster's curse that you guys know of?
I'm sorry for laughing. Coster's curse, these are like some of my talking points. They make like 10 million seeds a year. Like if you have a 1 by 1 meter patch, that's 10 million seeds a year, and they're so tiny. And if you line them up end to end, you get a 3.5-mile long chain. Not to mention that they're bird dispersed and self-compatible. So just, I guess I have a smaller yard, like under an acre, so it's easy for me. I mow it, I clip it, and then mulch it. It's hard without herbicides to do a large area, but maybe think about getting goats or something. They should eat it and help control it. Oh, you have 8 acres. So have you thought about fencing and getting herbivores?
I think they should just dose it at that point.
Well, dosing it, I think it's just going to make more come up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say like it's hard for humans to do this by active caring for the property, but 8 acres is a lot. So I think you would need help and get some ungulates in there that are fenced in.
Okay, thank you, Molly.
I'm glad you have a lot of natives, Layla. How do you kill it once you pull it out? If you pull it up by the roots, I would, if it doesn't have fruit on it, you can mulch it and compost it. But if it does have fruit and seeds on it, put it in a garbage bag and throw it in the dump. It's not worth keeping it on your property. It's better to just get rid of it because those seeds remain viable for over 5 years. They'll keep living. So you got to get rid of it if you're pulling it out. And I know, yep, seeds to the dump. That's right. Thank you.
And does anybody offer a creating a plan, like helping someone create a plan for like their landscape? Like they want to grow all these, they would like to grow a bunch of native plants, but like where do you even begin?
That's a project idea I hope to tackle in the future. But when me and Molly have chatted about it previously, it sounded like, I can't remember his name, Molly. There was someone who also had begun to develop and make public some almost like sample garden plans.
Yeah.
Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, that's the Grow Native book. And they have a blueprint for every microclimate you could think of. They've got 300 plants they're recommending, which is great, but not all of those plants are found in the nursery industry. So you might want to go to an expert like Cory or like another like native plant designer and have somebody that knows your area and knows what plants they can get, have them come in and design it and install your landscape is my recommendation. Do you do that, Cory?
Yeah, we can, if you want to get in touch with me and start that process and talk about where you're located and what plants will want to grow there and get the ball rolling.
Hey, thank you. So somebody has 3 Hōʻawa and they want to determine what sex the flower is. So do they have to wait till it actually flowers? Or is there any way to tell before that?
For the Hōʻawa, it should be both male and the same flower. So I don't think you have to worry about that. The one that I had mentioned, male and female, is the ʻAʻaliʻi. And you won't be able to tell until the flower comes out.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm scrolling through all the chat, make sure I got everything. Yeah, I got the new link from Kavehi, so let me try it. So hopefully this one works. Looks like it is working for you guys. And I think that is all the questions.
I think we have a few more. Let's see. Someone asked if Pōhinahina and ʻAʻaliʻi do well in Pahoa, which my gut tells me yes. Cory, you're probably the expert. Or Andy, if you want to
I'm
answer
in
that.
Pahoa, and they are both very happy here.
Someone else had a question on Facebook that came through. They have a ʻIlima papa from Amy Greenwell in Hōʻawa. It's thriving, but it's creeping away from the center 6 feet plus. So it's thinning at the base. What are your recommendations? Does she prune the plant or does she just reseed at the base?
I think you could do any combination of things, and Cory, maybe you could add in as well, but they can handle some pretty heavy prunings. So if you just if you prune around the edge of where you want the plant to be, it should sprout new growth somewhere else. But if you can actually leave some new leaves, behind where you prune it, then it's just going to send energy into that area and grow there as well. But once the stem gets super thick at the base, or kind of right around where it started growing, it might be difficult to get that to sprout new branches, and you might want to just sprinkle a few more seeds in that little zone too.
Yeah, I would agree with Rob. Once they do mature, that base of the plant does get pretty bare. If you want that covered, then just seed that area to fill in.
I just thought of a random question about seed storage. I know Molly, in the past when I've seen seeds in the bisque refrigerator. Is that the best recommendation? Like if you were to collect seeds from the ʻIlima, to put it in like a Ziploc and store it in the fridge, or how does that work?
I think storing it at cooler temperatures will make them last longer. If you're talking or less that you want to be storing them, you'd store them at room temperature, and then going further out, you could look into colder temperatures than just the refrigerator. But you want to make sure that they're very dry before you put them in there.
Thank you. I think that was all the questions we had.
I just put one more link in the chat. My good friend and lovely, amazing nursery owner, Eileen, reminded me that we should share the NRCS program with folks. So if you have a lot of acreage, I don't know how much, you can do different cost sharing projects. They might help buy fences for you or help get you trees that are non-invasive. So if you have a lot of property, I don't think they'll do it for 1 acre. I don't know enough about it, but that's the last chat that I added. So, and if you don't see it, just look at NRCS if you're looking to conserve bigger parcels of land. But other than that, do we have any other questions or comments? We're getting thank you for the presentation. People are happy for the information. All right, yeah, we're just getting lots of thank yous. But I would like to thank our hosts tonight, Andy, Rob, and Cory. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and helping Hawaii learn how to grow native, what the ins and outs are of each plant, where it grows, what's special about it, what it's used for. It's just good to know what you're getting into when you want to grow any plant, but especially native. My cat's like, it's cuddle time. All right, well,
Is it too late? Oh, sorry.
No, it's not.
Say, is it too late for a last minute question? We got one more in
Everyone's
on
still here.
Facebook.
What you got?
Cool. Ahia is asking, they have a ʻAʻaliʻi that is dried and it's been sitting for a few months. Would they be able to plant that with any luck? And if so, what is the best planting advice? So I guess growing media. Anyone want to take a stab at that?
I'll give it a try, and I encourage the other panelists to correct me if they hear something different. But yeah, within those attractive seed capsules, there's going to be a small black seed. You can kind of take it apart with your fingers and find them if you want to, but because it's a wind dispersed plant, it's not necessary to remove the seed from the capsules. So I would put it on sort of a general purpose like peat based soil mix and cover with something like perlite or vermiculite, and just keep it moist and be patient. That's what I would do. When something's been dried and possibly been at variable temperatures, the seeds may or may not be super viable. But if it's ʻElei, there's probably a lot of seeds in there. So I'd imagine something comes up. That's my best guess.
Thank you.
How long do you think people would have to wait until they germinate for ʻAʻaliʻi?
For the
Maybe
ʻAʻaliʻi,
Rob or Cory could answer that.
yeah, you kind of get those seeds out of there. And I think, I would definitely try to get as many of those seeds out of the ʻElei as you can. When you do make ʻElei, you're picking the fruit slightly prematurely, so it's still red. So the seeds might not have had time to put in there. But as it dries out, some of those seeds, it's pretty likely that some of them did make it all the way. So I would say it's worth a try. And I've had good success with taking the seeds out of the capsules, soaking them in warm to hot water overnight, and then putting it in the seed starter mix, like Andy said. And you should start to see something pop up probably within, I would say likely between 3 to 6 weeks after you put them in the soil.
I'm going to try your method. Thanks,
Yeah.
Rob.
That sounds pretty fast for a native plant, 3 to 6 weeks.
Don't quote me on that. Could be, I just started some recently, and it was like 6 weeks.
Wow, that's fast.
But sometimes could be longer.
Yeah, and to add to that, the soaking in hot water, it's like the hot water scarification. You can almost boil water up to like 160 degrees and soak it in there for a few hours, and then continue to let it soak overnight, and then yeah, plant in your medium, and that'll kind of help speed up the process a little bit.
All right, any more questions or comments?
Not on Facebook.
Think we're good.
Oh, well, thank you everybody for joining us. And again, you just heard from the experts. You can contact them and they will help you with growing advice, germination advice, planting advice, whatever you need. Thank you everybody for joining us, and happy Native Plant Month. And I hope everybody has a lovely evening. Aloha.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Hello, everybody.